Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to our session regarding proactive threat mitigation, Microsoft Defender for Identity, Security Posture Assessments. My name is Ort Semach. I'm a Senior Product Manager in the Microsoft Defender for Identity product group based out of Israel. And I'd like to welcome you to this session that we're going to talk about both the new identity security assessment from the Microsoft Defender for Identity team, alongside all the investment we've made in this area to showcase really cool stuff. We're going to start by a quick primer regarding Microsoft Defender for Identity if you're not familiar. Microsoft Defender for Identity is a security tool that is tasked with protecting your on-premise identities. We're doing that by providing four unique features, security pillars. One of the first is to prevent attacks in the first place by providing identity security posture assessment. Right when Defender for Identity is being installed, we start monitoring your environment, your security configuration, your AD schema, and to provide recommendation on how to best protect your environment to prevent security alerts to happen in the first place. But we always have to reside on the assumed breach side. So Defender for Identity detection capabilities, security alerts that rely on the Defender for Identity sensor that monitors the AD environment in forms of network activity, Windows events, ETW, to provide real-time security alerts that alert SecOps when something malicious has happened and provide all the relevant evidence that is required in order to mitigate the threat. We also provide investigation capabilities such as providing a user investigation priority score, activity events, and a lot of contextual information that helps SecOps people really make sense of what is happening in their environment in order to how to best respond to potential security threat. And we're also providing response capabilities alongside Azure AD, Office 365, and Microsoft 365 Defender Auto IR capabilities in order to how to best automatically or semi-automatically respond to threat alerts. All of that is being done through a cloud service that is updated on a weekly cadence using the latest security intel, security alerts, update to security assessment. So we have a whole team that is tasked with providing the richest experience regarding protecting your on-premise activities. And we're also expanding into new areas. As you know, as Defender for Identity was traditionally installed with the domain controller, but we've recently introduced also a sensor on your ADFS sensors. Defender for Identity sits alongside Microsoft's other security solutions such as Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, Cloud App Security, and Microsoft Azure AD Identity Protection to provide a really unique view of what's happening in your environment. So a typical security alert can usually start from a user clicking on phishing email, leading to an exploitation of an endpoint, leading to a communication back to a command and control channel, providing persistent capabilities, doing lateral movement and privilege escalation throughout your environment, and then getting to what we call the crown jewels, or the complete domain dominance, or complete taking over your environment, in which case an attacker can basically do whatever he wants. It can be deploy ransomware or steal some sensitive documentation. So Defender for Identity sits at the part that monitors the way that once an attacker gets a foothold on your on-premise AD environment, you usually start looking at where do I need to go next, what targets do I need to compromise, and this is where our security detection capabilities come into play and catch the malicious behavior. And as I said, we also provide prevent capabilities that try to help security team mitigate the threat in the first place. So in this session today, we're going to focus on the prevent part, the current identity assessment, as well as a bit of looking ahead. We're going to talk about how to integrate Defender for Identity with capabilities such as Microsoft Secure Score to respond to known vulnerabilities. And we're also going to show you how to utilize Microsoft 365 Defender advanced hunting to extend Defender for Identity security capabilities with lots and lots of demos. So we're going to start with what is currently available. And when you install Defender for Identity and you enable the integration with CloudOps Security, you immediately being presented with security value in the forms of identity security posture assessment, which we're going to have a look at in this session. The first screen is going to show you the 11 security assessments that we currently provide. And those are assessments that automatically start to evaluate once you install your first Defender for Identity sensors. We are constantly working on improving those, adding new capabilities, and also extending what the current assessment provide in terms of security value. For example, one of these assessments is the entities exposing credential in clear text, which currently provide all the LDAP simple bind authentication that Defender for Identity profile in your environment, means that those entities on the left are transmitting their credential in clear text. So we provide recommended action on what to do in order to remediate those and all the contextual information, such as if an account such as Vienna Mosley is tagged as sensitive and what is the activity count. So you can take action. We're going to go a bit into this in the demo section. We're also showing an interesting assessment called risky lateral movement path. So in this case, Nick Carlson, which is also a sensitive user, is logged on into particular devices, which put 7 non-sensitive entities in its path, which can lead to credential compromise. If we click on the recommended action, we're able to see that SharePoint SRV, which is a device that Nick Carson is currently logged on, has also local administrators in the forms of Vivan, Jeff, Gaspar, and others, which, if utilized or compromised, can harvest Nick Carlson credentials. So we provide actionable information on what you need to do in order to remediate the threat here. In this case, we are saying that you should remove local administrator permission from certain users. I can tell you that this particular assessment have generated a lot of aha moments for our customers, surfacing configuration that you might not have known otherwise, and in an interesting way, which can provide and how to into reducing the risk associated with sensitive users. Another assessment, which we're going to go into in details, is the unsecure careables delegation, in which we provide all the entities that are configured with types of careables delegation that we deem to be unsecure. In this case, any form of unconstrained careables delegation, and cases of resource-based and constrained delegation, which provide the exact details of the nature of this particular configuration. In this case, that provide an elevation path from a non-sensitive user, app 1, into or test user 1 into a sensitive entity, a domain controller 1. The last example that I want to showcase is an assessment that we call the unsecure account attributes, in which we provide entities that have types of unsecure account attributes, such as don't require Kerberos pre-authentication, a password that is stored in weak encryption ciphers, and also types of attributes such as use Kerberos DES encryption or store password using reversible encryption, both options that are available as an option in the account attributes in Active Directory, but are sometimes overlooked or have been placed for a particular reason a long time ago, but now provide an easy way for an attacker to find a weak spot in which they can reverse engineer that particular account password or secrets in order to utilize that against other targets in your environment.
Now let's configure some unsecure configurations. In this demo, I'm going to go into the Identity Security Posture Assessment screen, which is located in the CloudOps Security portal under Investigate, Identity Security Posture. And this data has all the information that Defender for Identities gets using its sensors. and we're going to take a look at two particular security configuration. One is regarding the unsecure Kerberos delegation, where we can see several entities, devices, and accounts configured with specific type of Kerberos delegation, which we configure to be unsecure. One of them is test user 1, which is also tagged as a honey token account. As you can see, there's tags in here that if there's an additional information relevant for this entity, Defender for Identity already tagged those and showcases them in the assessment. And we have a recommended action to remove DC1 from its list of Kerberos constrained Kerberos delegation, because the particular service, clip SRV in this case, is on a device entity, domain controller 1, that is configured as a sensitive, meaning it's the domain controller, it's a super sensitive service, and no or not sensitive entity should lead toward that, because that can lead to elevation of privilege. And in that case, in order to resolve that particular entity, we're going to pivot into the domain controller. We're going to search for test user 1. And in this entity delegation tab, we're able to see that we have two entries in here, one for DC1 for the clip SRV service type, and the second one for the SIRF service type for standalone. And since standalone is not a sensitive entity in our environment, DC1 is, that particular entity need to be removed in order for that account to be deemed as secure. We're going to remove that entity, and when we enable that setting, that when Defender for Identity reevaluate this particular device, it will be removed from that particular configuration. Now let's take a look at another assessment called Unsecure Account Attributes. In this case, we're able to see several accounts that are configured with unsecure attributes, such as using DES encryption and using store password using reversible encryption option. And we can see that Balthazar Roy has a single setting called store password using reversible encryption that need to be removed in order for that account to be configured as secure. So we're going to go back into our domain controller connection. This time, we're going to search for Balthazar. And we're going to go into the account options. And we're able to see that this particular entity has store password using reversible encryption. We will need to remove that setting and apply that in order to, again, Defender for Identity to get that setting and remove that account from that list. And after we remove it and we Defender for Identity reevaluate this account, Balthazar will be removed from that unsecure attribute assessment, and we're able to also go into the additional entities and reconfigure them to be more secure and get a passing score or reduced urgency for that particular assessment. Now let's switch gears a bit, and I'm going to talk about how to respond to security vulnerability with Microsoft Secure Score. Microsoft Secure Score is one of the many integration Defender for Identities has made with the different Microsoft security solutions, such as sending alert to Sentinel, viewing the unified SecOps experience with Microsoft Cloud App Security. And with Microsoft Secure Score, Defender for Identity sends all of its identity security assessment information into a single portal where you can view them and get an assigned score for each one of them and potentially correlate them with additional security assessment from other solutions as well. But before I show you how that looks like, I want to talk about a particular vulnerability called the printer bug. The printer bug is a vulnerability based on a published article from 2018 that talks about how an attacker can scan an AD environment and find weak configurations in the forms of servers such as the domain controller running the print spooler service, along with devices or entities that are configured for unconstrained Kerberos delegation. Through those and similarly unconnected security vulnerabilities, an attacker can gain elevated privileges in the form of the domain controller computer account through requesting its Kerberos ticket via the principal or service, and when that ask is done via a device configured for unconstrained Kerberos delegation, an attacker can get the hash value of the Kerberos ticket and gain elevated permissions in the forms of the domain controller computer account, which is a bad thing for an attacker to have. So let's see how Defender for Identity and Secure Score can mitigate that vulnerability. And for that, I'm going to switch into my Microsoft Secure Score solution, which is coming from the security.microsoft.com portal under Secure Score. In here, I can view all of my Secure Score information, including an improvement action, including scores broken down into identity, data, device, apps, infrastructure. And when I go into the improvement action tab, I can see a lot of security recommendations in here that involves a lot of different products. And I'm going to filter by Azure ATP. In here, I'm able to see Azure ATP, or Defender for Identity as it's now called, 15 published secure score controls. And 2 controls in particular are of interest to me. One is the modify unsecure Kerberos delegation that we saw earlier in the demo. And the other one is disable principal service on the domain controller, which we understand can use as a vector to get elevated permissions. I can even do even a further filtering by using the printer bug, which is a filter that I set myself, which is relevant to only those 2 improvement actions or security score controls. If I go into each one of these, such as the Kerberos delegation, I can press manage, and that will take me directly into the relevant security assessment. In here, showing me that all the entities configured for unsecure Kerberos authentication, including app 1, which is configured for unconstrained, which is relevant to the printer bug. And if I go into secure score and go into the other setting that is relevant for this particular vulnerability, when I press manage, it will again take me into the relevant security assessment. From in here, I can view all the 5 domain controller that has the principal service running. So now I have all the entities that I need to mitigate that vulnerability. So I'm going to go into my domain controller to reconfigure those. First one is going to be disable the principaler on DC1. And I'm going into the domain controller. I'm going to go into services. I'm going to search for the principal service, and I can see it's running and is set as automatic as startup type. And I can stop that service and disable it in order for that particular entity to be removed from that previous account. Now I'm going to search for app 1. I'm going to go into users and computers. I'm going to change the filter into devices. And for app 1, if I click on it, I can see that on the delegation tab, it is configured for unconstrained Kerberos delegation. From here, I can either remove that particular configuration or reconfigure it to a more secure constrained delegation type. Keep in mind that because of this particular configuration, I might need to check with the application owner on that particular server just to understand why this particular setting was configured in the first place. But keep in mind that unconstrained Kerberos delegation is never a secure configuration outside of devices that are domain controller. So I can just reconfigure to do not trust this computer for delegation, apply the setting. When I go back into my portal, after Defender for Identity reevaluate the machine, both DC1 and app1 in this assessment will be removed, and Secure Score will get that relevant information, and I can get the full points for that particular security control, and also mark that item as resolved, getting a even higher secure score than I got before, and I can make sure that these particular improvement actions that are relevant to the printer bug are mitigated. For our last section, I want to talk about how to further extend the identity security assessment data using
Microsoft 365 Defender.
New advanced hunting feature, which is a table format and a database in order to better correlate signals coming from different security products. What we've seen is that when we view identity assessments, such as identities that are exposing credentials in clear text, we're getting list of entities and a lot of recommended action and activities in order to better understand what's happening. But what is missing from that particular assessment is the underlying process information that can help us understand what exactly is causing this type of unsecure configuration. So if we go into the Defender portal, for example, we can view all the entities that are communicating via port 389, which is LDAP, and view all the network events coming from those devices. But again, we're getting a large list of actions that are uncorrelated to the type of unsecure communication detected by Microsoft Defender for Identity. So what we're going to do from that, we're going to go into the Advanced Hunting portal, which is located again, like SecureScore, under the Microsoft 365 Security portal. We're going to go into the Advanced Hunting tab, and we're able to view all the different information tables coming from all the different security products, such as Cloud of Security and Defender for Identity, such as the Defender for Office 365, Defender for Endpoints, and we're able to view all the different tables that are relevant for this product, such as the Identity Logon Events table, which is coming from all the logon events detected by Defender for Identity and Cloud of Security, and the device network events coming from Defender for Endpoints, and how we can correlate them together. So first, I want to show you how we can run a simple query in order to get all the LDAP in clear text activities coming from Defender for Identity. And this table represents what we can find if we go into the assessment itself and press on the activities. So this is the equivalent of going into the Cloud of Security activity log and searching for all the LDAP in clear text activities. Next, I'm going to do a search for all the device network events coming from all of my devices using successful connection via port 389. And again, I'm going to get all the different entities in here. So how can I correlate these two? So in here, I built a very simple query. I'm going to remove the timelines as it's already represented in here. And that's going to take two types of activities. One is coming from the first table and using the logon type equal LDAP in clear text, and the second one is coming from the network events, and I'm going to correlate both of them using both the device name and the account name. So we'll have activities using that are correlated using these two attributes, and that are coming between 2 minutes from each other, because again, these are coming from two different sensors, and there might be a slight difference between the detection time. And I'm going to project all of these combined attributes which are coming from both tables. So when I run this query, I'm going to get a single line that tells me that in Active Directory there's an LDAP in clear text activity on the August 23 coming from that particular device and that account, and that is using this particular process name. So now I have all the information that I need in order to take that output and turn that into actionable items. So for that matter, I'm going to go back into my environment and I'm going to collect into client 5, and what do you know, there is an LDAP process running in here that is configured for LDAP simple bind, which is causing the LDAP in ClearDex vulnerability to fire. In this case, I need again to either configure this particular setting to a more better security authentication configuration, or contact the application owner into better understanding how can I remediate this and in turn create a more robust authentication policy in my environment, eliminating that security vulnerability altogether.
And with that, I'd like to provide a quick summary of what we've seen in this session. In this session, we went through the latest security assessment provided by Microsoft Defender for Identity. We've seen how Defender for Identity Security Assessment can be integrated with Microsoft Secure Score to provide a better overview of how to mitigate threat vulnerabilities. And we've also shown how to utilize Microsoft 365 Defender, new advanced hunting capabilities to extend the security value provided by the Defender for Identity assessment as well. I'd like to remind you that in order to start getting the security assessment data, once you install the Defender for Identity sensor, you need to integrate or click the checkbox that's called Azure ATP Data Integration button in Cloud of Security. And once you do that, under the Investigate panel, the Identity Security Password automatically start to evaluate your environment and provide security data. And we'd also like to invite you to join our tech community, where the product group closely monitors customer feedback when we provide the critical information and latest security blogs, requests to join preview programs and others. If you'd like, we also have a bunch of other webinars available at the top link. So I welcome you to check that section out to learn more about Microsoft Defender for Identity. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining our session today.